quick welcome and introduction. My name is Mayette McDonald. I've been a grant manager here at CalRecycle for about a year and a half now, and I primarily manage co-digestion and organics grants. We also have Stan.
Hi, folks. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm Stan Ueda. I'm also a grant manager, and I work on several different greenhouse gas grant programs.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Lavin, also a grant manager, and I work on only organics. I'm all organics.
And I'm Molly Park, and I work on the organics grant program as well as the fiber plastics and glass grant programs.
And I'm Stephanie. I'm the supervisor over the Greenhouse Gas Reductions Grant Units. Thank you all for attending today and being part of this program. And we have some great grant managers that you're working with for the next 2 years. And feel free to always reach out to them or any one of us if you have questions during the term of your grant. Thank you.
Yes. So as Steph said, we are all grant managers for Org 7. The information we're going over here today applies to all of the project types with the exception of in-vessel project types, which will have just a few more details that we'll cover. So today we're going to go over the grant term schedule, grant documents, our grant management system, lovingly referred to as GMS, reporting requirements, payment requests, and we'll finish out with some closeout information as well as some other important pieces of info for you. And at the end, when we have time, we will have our question and answer period. Next slide, please. A quick note on grantee contacts. It is the grantee's responsibility to keep contacts updated in the grants management system. Please make sure as we enter into regular grant reporting periods that your contacts are accurate and assigned correctly. There can only be one primary contact assigned to the grant. This will be CalRecycle's first point of contact when we reach out about reporting requirements and payment requests. If your signature authority contact changes, notify your grant manager as soon as possible so it doesn't impact your ability to request a payment reimbursement. The signature authority is an official authorized signature on the grant, and they're recognized by our budgets unit, and therefore it requires our fiscal processing and oversight unit to approve those changes. Please notify your grant manager of any contact preferences or changes to contacts. For example, if you would like a support staff or accounting person to be copied on grant reporting or payment request correspondence, that needs to be communicated to your grant manager, and they can make that happen. Next slide, please. Now let's go over some grant term milestones. While all grant agreements have been executed, not all of you may have been issued your notice to proceed or your NTP just yet. Your NTP is issued when all the requirements prior to commencing work are fulfilled, as noted in the section of the procedures and requirements. Your grant manager has already been in contact with you about any outstanding documents needed to issue your NTP. If you have any questions about this, please contact your grant manager. And as noted on the slide, costs incurred prior to your NTP date are not eligible for reimbursement. The terms of your grant require quarterly reporting of both qualitative and quantitative project data. The due dates for quarterly reporting can be found in the procedure and requirements document. And each quarter, you will complete and upload a written progress report and performance table into our grant management system that your grant manager will review and ultimately approve. So your grant manager will provide you with the templates for the progress report and the performance table prior to your reporting period. So your next one will be in June. And you'll also have the opportunity to submit a payment request with every progress report if needed. Your grant term ends on April 1st, 2026. This is also the date that your final report and final payment request are due. A separate final report template will be provided before then. And all costs of the grant must be incurred and paid prior to this date. There are no exceptions to incur costs you intend to request reimbursement for after this date. Next slide. Thank you. We're going to get into grant documents with the next slide. The grant agreement between grantees and CalRecycle is made up of the cover sheet signed by both parties, the terms and conditions, which includes legal definitions and explanations, the procedures and requirements, which includes grantee duties and requirements, and the notice to proceed, which will be issued by your grant manager via email when all your prior to commencing work requirements have been met. Again, as a reminder, no grant-funded costs should be incurred prior to receiving your NTP, as they are not eligible for reimbursement. Next slide, please. I'm going to go quickly through these documents just in general. We have the approved budget and approved work plan. Please notice the word approved there. These may be slightly different than the application versions that you submitted, but they could also be the same if no changes were needed. You and your grant manager have made or are in the process of making any necessary revisions to these documents for them to be approved. Feedstock certification. This form is a required document to disclose how much and where your feedstock comes from. The reliable contractor declaration. If you have construction expenses as part of your approved budget, please complete and submit the CalRecycle Form 168. This form can be completed for consultants and general contractors, but does not need to be completed for subcontractors. Publications and outreach materials funded with grant monies need to be approved in advance to ensure that CalRecycle supports the content and ensure appropriate acknowledgement of CalRecycle and the logo use. Next slide, please. Some additional information on the budget and work plan documents. Any proposed budget revision or work plan modification needs to be sent to your grant manager for approval prior to procurement. Some reasons for revisions could include equipment coming in significantly over or under budget, supply chain issues, procurement issues, or permit delays. Make sure to communicate these types of concerns with your grant manager and that you have their approval before taking action. Your work plan details the estimated timeline for the major milestones of the grant project, and we'll be using it when reviewing your progress reports to make sure that your project is on track. Next slide, please. This slide is specific to in-vessel projects only. There's just a couple pieces of additional documentation that are required for these projects to receive NTP. The first being documentation from your LEA, confirming that the project is within the limits of an excluded activity and permits are not required. And number two, a system-specific temperature monitoring plan demonstrating that the proposed technology can achieve and maintain a temperature of 55 degrees Celsius or higher for a pathogen reduction period of 3 days. If you have any more questions about your in-vessel project's requirements, please reach out to your grant manager. Next slide, please. Please note, the CalRecycle website recently underwent a redesign and grantee forms have moved pages. They're now at this link provided, the application and grant management tools page. As a reminder, we'll send this deck out afterwards so you have a direct link accessible. And now I'm going to pass it on to Stan to talk about GMS.
Thank you, Maya. Yes, GMS. Let's talk about GMS. We use GMS to receive information from you. This is where you'll submit your payment requests, your progress reports, and any other required documents. Since you submitted your application through GMS, you should already have access to your approved grant. There's a login link here. You see it on the screen. If you have any issues, reach out to your to our grant assistant email, which is located also on the screen. They will be able to help you out with connection. There are demo videos available online showing how to submit payment requests, your progress report, update your contacts, and upload your documents. Any new contacts will need to create a GMS web pass. The link is down in the brown box below. You can do so via that link. Now let's go over some basic navigation. When you log in, you'll automatically get popped up to My Rewards Open Grants window. You can access your grant in two different modes in GMS. One is through the application mode, the other or module, and the other is the grant management module. You see the boxes are pointed to each of those links that go along with your specific grant project. So again, when you pull up when you log into GMS, the project window here is specific for you and will list all the projects you're involved with the CalRecycle. When you click into grant management, you can navigate your grant with these tabs located across the top. The most important tabs are the first one, the payment request tab. This will allow you to create new transactions and upload your associated supporting documentation. The next tab is your reports tab, and it will take you to your progress reports, and they're due by the due date located in your procedures and requirements. Please note that for most of you, progress report number 1 was due March 31st, and most of you have already had a meeting with your grant manager. And so for progress report number 1, it will be the notes from taken by your grant manager of what was discussed during your meeting. Some of you had submitted a regular report because your report documents were ready, but for most of you, it will just be the notes. From here on out, from progress report number 2 on out, you'll be using the report template and performance table template, which will be sent over to you soon. They're still in development. And then the next tab here is the Documents tab, and this is where you access most of your recently approved budget and work plan. There's a link here that says Access Grant Management Module. This is where you'll be able to flip over to the application module. Once you're in the application module, you can scroll down to the resources document table, and you'll find your official grant documents like your procedures and requirements and terms of conditions. You can see located in that box there. When you scroll up from that particular window in the application module, the resources documents that are located in the lower left-hand side. When you scroll up in that module, you'll come across these tabs here. I'm going to point out 2 important tabs. First is the context tab pointed out here in the slide. Again, if you have any changes or additions to your contact, this is the location. When you open up this tab, this is the location where you'll be able to do those changes. If you happen to have a contact that is no longer involved with the grant project, please let your grant manager know, because there's a process that we want to maintain in order to keep that contact, but not have them show up and be able to change or edit or add to grant management to GMAS. The other important tab that you probably won't use, hopefully not at all, is your details tab. This is the tab where your business address is located and where your checks, if you submit a payment request or reimbursement, will be sent to that particular address. If there's any changes to that address where you want your payment request check sent to, please let your grant manager know, because that will need to be changed in details, and we'll also have to let our accounting office know so they know where to send that check.
Thanks, Dan. I believe we're
Dan.
now going to be resuming with Andrew on progress reports.
Andrew, you're on mute. Can you start over, please?
My bad. Good morning, everyone. All right, so next we're going to review progress reports. As discussed, you're required to submit reports quarterly. Your first progress report was due March 31st. The written report would have been due March 31st, but most of you did a check-in call instead of a written progress report. Some of you did a written progress report. And so your next progress report will be due June, around the 15th. The dates shift slightly just as it's the closest business day essentially to the 15th of the month. So they're due every March, June, September, and December. And all the due dates are listed in your P's and R's, procedures and requirements documents under the milestone section. So you can put those all in your calendar if you like. All right, the next slide. The grant manager, your grant manager will send out reporting templates for both the progress report and the performance table in the weeks prior to the June reporting date. Both are required. So the progress report is sort of qualitative information about your progress, and the performance table is quantitative data about diversion of tons of waste and jobs. And both of these are required, and they have to be approved before you are able to, well, I guess before we are able to approve a reimbursement. So you can submit the reimbursement request, the payment request, at the same time as you submit the progress report. But then, as I'll sort of go over in a little bit, we have to approve the progress report before we can approve the payment request. And then the progress report template is a Word doc. It's going to be a docx file, I believe. And so please keep it as a Word doc format so that we can make comments and use track changes and those kinds of features that we like to use at CalRecycle. Please do not save as a PDF, as tempting as that might be, because that's kind of standard in other contexts. You're only required to report on activities occurring during the current reporting period. So that should be anything that was started, completed, or ongoing during that reporting period. And so if you've already finished it and you finished it in a prior reporting period, just remove it from that current progress report, so that each quarter you're only reporting on things that have started, things that are completed, or things that were ongoing during that reporting period. And you can find those date ranges in the procedures and requirements, the P's and R's. Good. Okay. So you have to answer all the questions in the progress report template. Please do not just put not applicable or does not apply. Please explain to us why it isn't applicable, or why give us reasoning why this doesn't apply to your project, or your or why you haven't started construction, so you don't have any diversion yet, that kind of thing. As previously mentioned, the grant manager and potentially others from our technical team or management at CalRecycle will make comments using track changes. And so they may make some edits and may make some comments, and then they may send it back to you and say, please answer these questions, please make these revisions, and then send it back to me. And please, so we'll send you something with like unresolved comments and unresolved track changes, edits in the document. Please do not resolve or accept track changes or anything like that. Leave everything as unresolved, not accepted track changes, so that we can see all the edits that happened, and we can track all of the sort of pending issues in the document. All right, next slide, please. So there is an order of operations here. So as I mentioned before, progress reports must be approved before payment requests can be approved. So it's important to respond to any questions or comments in a timely manner, especially if you're also waiting for a reimbursement, because we have to approve the progress report before we can approve the payment request. But like I said before, you can submit them all at once. In fact, that's probably the best, is to submit them all at once, if at all possible. And then we will work through the progress report and then work through the payment request. And then we also are, this is kind of new with our program. So with previous programs, we were asking you to put pictures in a Word document and upload that. Now we would like you to directly upload high resolution photos photos of equipment, photos of construction that took place, photos of any community outreach, community benefits events, compost giveaways, like that sort of thing. We would like to have some photos of the progress. It's like quarterly progress. We don't need daily or weekly updates. We just need to know, like, at the end of this quarter, kind of where are you? What things have taken place? What events and what kind of construction? A modern smartphone, pretty much any modern smartphone will take high enough resolution and high enough quality for our purposes. And we might feature your grant project in program reports internally, and then also publicity, things that might go out externally from CalRecycle. We will reach out for permission if we do that. You know, you don't have to worry about us just taking your photos and using them. We will reach out if we choose to use a photo of yours. But that's part of why we ask for photos, and part of it is just because we're we can't get to your site, so we'd like to see what's going on visually. And then also education and outreach materials that you produce should be documented in the reports, and they should be reviewed by your grant manager because there are certain requirements of, like, putting a funded by CalRecycle logo on there, and we may review some of the content for accuracy and things like that. All right, next slide, please. So along with your progress report, you're required to submit a performance table quarterly. And so this is our quantitative data that we collect. And then we often report this data to other bodies like CARB, the Air Resources Board, and other organizations and programs and stuff. So even if you don't have diversion report, please submit the performance table with zeros entered. So we want to know each quarter, if it's a 0, then insert a 0, please, so that we actually get data from you, because zero still counts as data. The performance table is going to detail tons of diversion from landfill, and then of waste or material from landfill, and then also jobs. And so we'll collect data on both of those things. If you have diversion to report each reporting period, then please also submit a feedstock certification form 778 for verification. You'll report grant-funded positions and any training that took place during the reporting period in a separate tab. So the next slide, here's an example of a performance table, the first sheet in the performance table. On the left, well, possibly the first sheet is instructions. So this is the sort of diversion tab. On the left, we have various types of material diverted, residuals sent to landfill after processing, and information on intermediate commodities. Across the x-axis, sort of left to right, we have date ranges that associate with those quarterly progress reports, those quarterly reporting periods. And so each quarter, you'll just add one column and upload a new copy, and then add another column the next quarter and upload a new copy. So we'll end up with a copy, but you'll basically only have one document on your computer. Just add a column and upload it, add a column and upload it. You'll input your data in tons, and the numbers should match the submitted feedstock certifications and what's reported in your progress report. Next tab, please. Slide, please. So this is what the jobs and training tab looks like. You complete a row for each job that is funded by the grant. And so not necessarily every job of your subcontractors and things like that, but jobs that are directly funded by the grant. There's some basic column headers here, like the date of the hire, the number of jobs provided, the classifications, the credentials, and so on. And then you'll also see the reporting periods, the quarters, for the number of hours worked for that position or those positions. All righty.
Thanks, Andrew. Now we're going to move on to grant payments, a very exciting part of our presentation. So all about reimbursements. We're going to talk about the details of those payment requests. A reminder, the payment requests are only made when each progress report is due. As we've already mentioned in the earlier slides, that's on a quarterly basis. These go hand in hand with your quarterly progress reports. Please submit them on time. Very important to have those submitted on time. We can only approve eligible expenses from your approved budget that were already incurred. These services or items must have been ordered, paid for, and if applicable, delivered and in use. A reminder that we cannot approve a payment request until the progress report is approved. I do apologize. I hadn't advanced the slide for myself to speak. A reminder that we cannot approve a payment request until the progress report is approved. Each payment request must be submitted with documentation. The documentation that you'll be including with your payment request is going to be the grant payment request form CalRecycle-87. So we mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have a new forms page. You'll find these forms there. You'll be able to search for them by these numbers. The CalRecycle form 87, the grant payment request form, the expenditure itemization summary form, CalRecycle 777, and then 2 supporting documents for each purchase. So one being the invoice or proof of purchase and proof of payment. Very important here to note to the accepted types of supporting documents are on page 17 of the procedures and requirements. So you'll find details for what those types of proof of payment and proof of purchase could be. Once your payment request is approved by your grant manager, it is sent to accounting for processing and then on to the state controller's office, who will issue the payment. It typically takes about 45 days from approval to receive your funds. There is a 10% withhold with each payment request reimbursement, which will be released at the end of the grant term with your final report's approval. Ensuring you have all of your documentation and that everything is clear supports timely payment processing. Always reach out if you have questions. So again, your grant managers are here to help and support you. So if you have questions about preparing your payment request, always reach out to us with those questions. So now let's take a look at what the Form 87 looks like. So this is the grant payment request form. This is a PDF file, Adobe PDF file, as a note. You must complete items 1 through 14 on this page. So essentially the first page of this file is what the grantee is completing. You do want to use Adobe format to fill this, to complete these fields. You'll make sure that your grant number is in this format. So you'll see here we have a box on the left-hand side of the screen. Box 2, your grant number for this grant is going to begin with ORG7 for the organic 7 cycle, followed by a -21 for a fiscal year, and then a 4-digit code. So that is your grant number. But if you have questions about what any of these fields would be, where you find them in the grants management system, that's a great question to send to your grants manager so that we can help you with that. The payment request number is another example that must match the transaction number in the grants management system. So for example, your first payment request that you would be submitting into the grants management system would be transaction number 1. And so that would correspond to transaction number grant payment request 1 on your CalRecycle-87. The expenditure period must cover all of the dates from your submitted receipts and invoices and match the EIS or PES, which we'll talk about, which is the personnel expenditure summary. Also ensure the address here matches the address we have on file. So as we mentioned previously, when you're navigating in GMS, the address that we have on file for the grant, this is the address the check will go to. And we want to make sure it matches so that the state controller's office doesn't have any hiccups or problems in processing your payment request once it's been approved. This form must be signed via Adobe Digital ID by your signature authority. So very important that your signature authority has their Adobe Digital ID set up and prepared so that they can sign this form. The second page is for us, your grant managers. We fill out that second page, and you'll be submitting this, this form through the payment request screen in the grants management system, along with our next supporting document. So this is the expenditure itemization summary form, what it looks like. This is an Excel file, and it's the it's the form 777. Here you'll list line items you're requesting reimbursement for, so each expenditure, along with the correlating invoice date, invoice number, and a brief description of the expense. So each one of those is a column. So you see the invoice date followed by the invoice number and then the dollar amount. The total here should match the amount requested in the grant payment request form. Your supporting documents should match these line items. So each of your supporting documents should correspond to the individual expenditures that you're requesting reimbursement for. Make sure, very important, make sure your expenses are listed under the correct category. So again, you're going to be referencing your approved budget and verifying which subcategory of your approved budget the expense should be attributed towards. Very important. And we're going to move on to the next slide. So with the cost and payment documentation specifics, more details, with each line item, supporting documentation is required, as we've mentioned. An invoice, receipt of payment, or purchase order, please highlight the claimed expense for clarity. So if you have a statement or if you have a receipt that has multiple items on it and you're only requesting reimbursement for one of those items, you do want to highlight that so that we can determine which of those items are going to correspond to your payment request. Each item will also need proof of payment, which shows the payment cleared. This can be a copy of a bank statement, a canceled check, or other items. And again, there is a list of more examples of the acceptable formats and the procedures and requirements on page 17. We essentially want to see, one, that you were billed for the item, and two, the payment went through. This is not an internal document like budgeting reports. It must be independent verification of the invoice and payment received. If there's missing documentation, your grant manager will reach out as necessary. If you do have jobs to report that reporting period, you'll submit a personnel expenditure summary form. This form is not required if you have an alternate time reporting method pre-approved by your grant manager. So now let's take a look at the personnel expenditure summary form. And this is a form, this is the PES form. I just want to note that this is a form that you would submit if you were submitting those personnel hours. So here you'll identify the task number as it's listed in your work plan, add the name and classification of your employee, the dates they worked, this can be a date range, along with their hourly rate. The sheet will then calculate the total. Please describe the work activities. These totals must match your EIS and the jobs tab of your performance table. So this is for grant funded reimbursement of those personnel positions. And finally, we're going to move into our grant closeout period. So the little bit of detail about the grant closeouts. When the end of the grant term comes in 2 years, your grant manager will send you a final report template, which will be different from your quarterly progress report template. You'll have the opportunity to submit your final payment request, and there will be a 10% withhold release once your final report is approved. Publicized acknowledgement of support from both California Climate Investments and CalRecycle is approved by your grant manager as needed. And finally, we advise you to keep all of your grant records for at least 3 years after the end of the grant term. Grantees may be requested to participate in post-grant term 3-year annual surveys as mentioned on page 17 in the procedures and requirements. The 3 consecutive years for the annual survey is to verify continuous progress of projects funded by the Organics Grant Program. And some other important information. Keep your contacts information in GMS up to date. If someone's been replaced, remove that contact in GMS and be sure to add the new contact. So we do have a new point of contact. You can also reach out to your grant manager to assist with that if you have questions. If you have changes to your signature authority or the address where payments are sent, reach out to your grant manager. Take care of this as soon as possible in advance of a payment request. This information, again, has to be accurate because the state controller's office won't be able to process the payment request. And also as a reminder to submit a reliable contractor declaration form before beginning construction. So those are for those projects that do have a budgeted amount for your construction. You do want to be preparing and submitting and uploading your reliable contractor declaration form to the grants management system. And a few other items. If you have questions, please review the procedures and requirements and terms and conditions of the Organic 7 grant cycle. A lot of answers can be found there, especially in the P's and R's. But if you can't find what you're looking for, do reach out to your grant manager. We're always here to help. We may reach out to you to coordinate site visits periodically. And again, as a reminder, keep your records for 3 years post-grant term end. So that wraps up today's orientation. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to go ahead and hand off to my other colleagues in my unit. If you do have other questions, or if you have questions about the orientation schedule, we're going to go ahead and allow that time now.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you all of you for attending today. If this is your first state grant or working with CalRecycle, this may seem overwhelming, but I assure you it will get better each quarter and easier for you. Again, our grant managers are experienced and here to help you along the way. There's an email address on the screen right now if you have additional questions. And of course, you can reach out directly to your grant manager as things come up. There's also the next reporting period is June, but feel free to reach out before that if you are filling out forms that you have questions on. And right now I would like to open up the floor for any questions that anybody on the call may have. It really can be about anything. We have a significant amount of time left here, so feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat, or ask it directly. What questions do we have from this group this morning?
We did such a great job. There's no
I was going to say, everybody, we covered everything, or there was just a lot of information in there. We will send this PowerPoint out after the presentation. I'm trying to think if anybody had any other questions that was asked in a previous session that we could answer, but again, we're happy to send this out and then answer questions as they come up when you're doing your reporting. One last call for questions from the group that is on this morning.
Sure, I have one. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead,
Oh,
Colin.
awesome. I just want to know if there would be any additional presentations. This is definitely my first time jumping into this, whole experience. So, maybe after diving into the materials more, I was just wondering if there'd be another chance, another informational presentation like this.
So this is the third of fourth, and the last one we're offering is this afternoon. You're welcome to attend that as well. We can get you into that one as well, and it would give you a chance to hear it again.
That might help.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll reach out to you, Colin, and get you signed up for the afternoon session. And
Awesome.
yeah, absolutely, hear it again.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to absorb it all, and I got a bunch of notes here, and I'm excited to do this. And yeah, will there be? I guess what I meant is, like in a couple months from now, will there be kind of a next steps orientation, or this is it? We're just ready to go from here.
This is it. You're ready to go from here because you've had your check-in call, or maybe you have it scheduled. I think most grantees have done a check-in. The next report is due June 15th.
Yep.
And so in advance of that, as you just start to go through this process, you reach out to your grant manager at any point, really. We're here to help you. So when you're like, oh, I'm just now getting the template, and making the report, or I'm just now starting on the payment request, my first payment request. Is this right? Yeah, we don't have an additional session. Actually, I'm going to offer this up. If we get lots and lots of questions for a particular thing, we might be able to host a payment request one separately where we just spend an hour doing a payment request. I'd be happy to do that in the future. So I'll add that to our list. But for now, between now and June, this is our major or first orientation for Org 7, but we might come out with other ones. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you. And yes, my coworker definitely did the check-in. I've been brought on to help shepherd this. So thank you. That was very helpful. This was a great presentation too. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. Glad it was helpful. All right. I've got a hand up for JD Guzman.
Hi, this is John Mar here. I just had a quick question. Also wanted to say thank you guys for the orientation. It was definitely helpful. Regarding the photos, you guys mentioned that the separate photo file is not necessary anymore. I just wanted to clarify, do the photos go into the progress report or are they uploaded separately into GMS?
Yeah, I will do a better job here also about just clarifying that, because I think this was another question that was asked in another session. But yeah, in the past, if you've been a prior grantee, we had you submit the photos like embedded into a section of the actual Word document report. And we're now asking you to just upload a JPEG because a high resolution, again, as Andrew said, any smartphone's taking a high enough resolution for us these days. What's nice when you just upload it is it shows the progress and we have access to that file. So if somebody else asks, hey, how's this project going? Or, hey, what does the equipment that we paid for look like installed? We have that file. We also report to CARB. And I meant to add that earlier as well. All of this reporting that we are collecting from you guys is because we have an obligation to report the California Climate Investment Cap and Trade Funds, by which we are allocated these funds, to the California Air Resources Board. So we take the information you give us and we in turn collate that and present it to them, or report to them and for their reporting requirements on the funds. They often ask for highlights of good projects, any interesting projects, new technology, and we then in turn do a write-up and provide photos. We'll reach out to you guys if we have any questions on more information or which are better photos. But having the JPEG file itself is very helpful, uploaded straight into that reports folder in GMS.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, before we get into the next question, may I also add if you could somehow describe what that photo is, so we know what we're looking at, and maybe include what it is in your progress, or maybe a date or something like that. Just again, we use these as a record of getting a snapshot of what's going on throughout the grant term. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, I just wanted to, if I remember right, in GMS, when you upload like a file, there's a description box where you can input that information, correct?
correct.
Okay.
That's an excellent point. And labeling your files, I'm not sure that we also touched on that much, but when you get into that, please, if you are uploading documents, label it, depackager, or even depackage your invoice when you are uploading those files. It makes it tremendously helpful. Sometimes what will happen is folks will upload all of these documents and it just is issued a standard numerical alphanumeric number dot whatever file path. And what we could really use is please name it, name what it is, and then we can find what we're looking for and it expedites the whole process. There was another question on the photos that have come up before, and I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, somebody asked on the previous call how often and how much progress they should show in the photos. And what I expressed is that if we are reviewing this every quarter. So if you have an important milestone like installation, show us that photo of installation, even if it was like delivered and then you had to install it. And you could take photos many times throughout the quarter. Just one kind of summing up what happened in those photos. Same with the report, you'll be working on things and reporting on it. And in summation, what we're looking for is just each quarter we'll see the progression and the photos can mirror that as well. This was installed, here's our photo, or we received this, or, the concrete pad was poured, here it is. And then the next photo, we'll see, some equipment installed. Okay, I think Ryan Todd is next.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the reimbursement piece. Our project is relatively simple. The bulk of the cost is actually purchasing and installing the equipment, but there's a tiny bit of cost up front to kind of do some site prep. Would it be acceptable to, let's say the site prep is done in the first quarter and then the delivery and install is the next quarter? Could I submit all of it in the second quarter instead of submitting for like $2,000 in the first quarter? Is it okay to have it spill over and just do one all at the same time?
Absolutely. And that's an excellent question. Anybody at any point, any grantee at any point after you receive your NTP Any costs approved, eligible costs incurred after the day of and after the NTP, all the way up through the grant term end, can be reimbursable. So absolutely, you can, if you're like, hey, I'm only going to need 2 payment requests, I don't need that cash up front, we can float that, and I'll just make the, request, say in, September. That's, and for any point past the NTP, that's 100% okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Another point that was made in the presentation, but just to drive it home, is that the costs need to be incurred and paid for prior to the grant term end date. So you can't purchase something, let's say a day before your grant term ends, and then have to wait to get that payment, the proof of payment information afterward, that's dated afterward, that shows a clearing date after your grant term end. So it needs to all be done prior to that. All right, any other questions? These are all really good questions. Okay, yeah.
Is it okay if I just mention a question from the other session?
Yeah.
Yeah, someone had asked how many people can be added as contacts in GMS? Like, is there a limit? And there is no limit. Multiple individuals can be in the contacts for a single grant. But we just advise that only one individual can be a user for the same email login. So you shouldn't share an email login with other folks. If additional users want to be contacts on a grant, then they would need to create a WebPass account, which is linked in the slides that we'll send out.
Yeah, that's important for us, keeping straight who we're getting information from and what role they are, because some grants have multiple contacts and partners, and so, and the participants, and there's a lead participant, that's the primary grantee, and then other grants also have secondary participants on this. And so, yeah, that's very important that we just understand like who's submitting and who our contacts are. And it's a little bit clearer when we're looking at submissions. Thanks for that, Maya. Okay, anybody else from my team want to add anything before we head off?
Yeah, just before you close, Steph, again, thank you everybody for joining. I just want to mention probably the next real contact that your grant manager will have with you grantees would be receiving your official progress report template and your performance table. The report template is done, but each of the performance tables are individually, they're customized to your specific project, meaning that we're only putting in the types of waste diversion that is part of your project. So those are still being developed. And once those are completed, that's when you'll receive those 2 report templates for your next progress report number 2 that's due, as mentioned, in June. Thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you all very much for coming today. We so appreciate you attending. And we look forward to working with you in the next quarters to come over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I'll follow up and send out this recording as well as the slides via email later today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.